So, horror movie sequels, are they destined to fall short of what the original was? Or do we get lucky every once in a while and have that sequel that comes along that somehow miraculously is better than the original? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, guys. I want to say thank you real quick for my last top 10 video. It actually did pretty well on my channel, so I appreciate you guys for that. So I figured I would give you another one, and I tried to think of an interesting topic in the realm of horror movies, and this one came to mind because usually the original horror film that comes out is kind of the gold standard, and every sequel that comes out after that just starts to get worse and worse and worse. But every once in a while, the opposite of that happens. So I'm going to give you guys my top 10 horror movie sequels that are, or at least I think, are better than the original. And this is my opinion. This is not an objective list. Feel free to share your opinions down below as well. And I also think this video might be interesting because you guys might give me some suggestions of sequels that maybe I'd never heard of or never seen before that are better than the original that I would like to check out as well. So the only stipulation for this list, just to make it more interesting, is this has to specifically be a part 2 of a series that is better than the original. Because I think if you included any sequel, I think the list could be much greater, but I wanted to give myself just more obstacles just to make it more difficult for me. For example, I think a lot of people would probably say Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, is better than the original, or they like it better than the original. I don't agree. I like the original better, but it is a pretty common opinion that people like Dream Warriors the best, but that one doesn't count because that is a part 3. So we're only going with part 2s. I also want to get something out of the way because I feel like some people will assume that a few of these films are on the list, but for me, I actually do like the original better. For example, Evil Dead 2. A lot of people would say is better than the original, and Evil Dead 2 is a great movie. I still put it at a 10 out of 10. It is where Evil Dead kind of found its tone. It's where Ash finally becomes a badass, puts the chainsaw in his hand. It's iconic, right? But the original Evil Dead, it just so happens to be my favorite horror film of all time for many, many reasons. I like the pure horror atmosphere of it. I like that it was a first-time filmmaking experience and that you feel that in every frame of the movie. In fact, I just did a full-length commentary track on The Evil Dead over on my Patreon, so if you want to see me gush for an hour and a half as to why it's my favorite horror film, just go watch that and I won't have to do it here. Another one people would probably assume is on the list is Aliens. And again, I think both Alien and Aliens are both 10 out of 10 films. It's all a matter of preference, but I do prefer the original Alien. Again, one of my favorite horror films of all time. I like the claustrophobic atmosphere of it. I like the horror tones. I like just the pure uncertainty of what the characters are dealing with. There's something about it that I think is really special, and so it's always going to be my favorite of that franchise. And another one would be the George Romero Living Dead series. And with that one, a lot of people would choose either the first, second, or third movie that he made, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, or Day. And if you choose any of those, you're not wrong. But I think specifically, probably Dawn of the Dead has the most fans that would say it is their number one in the George Romero series. And Dawn of the Dead is an absolute masterpiece, and I would never deny that. But again, just for my personal preferences, I do prefer Night of the Living Dead. Again, I think it's about tone. I think it's about atmosphere. I like the black and white. I like the characters being trapped in the house. I like, very specifically, about Night of the Living Dead that really wasn't done again in like any zombie movie, and they should bring it back, is like the scene where they all finally get into the house. All the zombies are remarkably silent. The zombies make some noise in Night of the Living Dead, but mostly they just have this sort of deadpanned, just blank, emotionless look into their eyes. You know how nowadays every zombie movie has to have the zombies make so much noise, just the constantly, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm done with that. Let's go back to the silent zombies of the original. I don't know, something about that is creepier to me. But anyways, those are all movies that people would probably put on their list of a number 2 that is better than the original, but just for me personally, I do prefer the original in those instances. But let's get into my top 10 list. And I also want to say that my top like 7 or 8 I had down pat. I like those those are movies that I specifically knew I was going to put on this list. But once I got down to numbers 9 and 10, I was having a hard time. I was having a really hard time thinking of part 2 that was better than the original. So I will admit that my number 9s and 10 are kind of cheating in a way. And you'll see why. Because my number 10 pick is going to be Troll 2.
Oh my God!
Okay, so whether or not you consider Troll 2 to be a horror movie, I mean, we are dealing with monstrous creatures that are eating people alive. Just they turn them into plants first, and there's a weird witch lady that makes out with a dude with an ear of corn in between them, which I don't know why I like that scene so much. Probably said something about me. But regardless, the original Troll is not a bad movie. Like, it's all right for what it is. It's like a family dealing with some weird troll in their apartment complex. There's a singing dance scene. I don't know what's going on. But Troll 2 has literally nothing to do with Troll 1. So that's why it's cheating, is that they're not connected story-wise, lore-wise. They're not even trolls in Troll 2. They're goblins. So, like... But Troll 2 is considered to be the best, worst movie of all time. They've even made documentaries about it. And Troll 2 is so immensely entertaining to watch. If you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend it. It is just... It's something that you want to gather all your friends together with, maybe have a few drinks, and just lay back in, like, remarkable awe of how batshit crazy and ridiculously stupid that movie is. It is a treat. It is a treasure, and if I had the choice, I would always pick to watch Troll 2 over the original Troll. My number 9 pick is also cheating a little bit because I'm going to say VHS 2. And the reason why this one is cheating is because the VHS movies are anthology films. So it's not a connective story. There's no crossover characters. It's all just different short films compiled into one longer film. But I think VHS 2 has the most consistent, good quality short films throughout its entire run. It is the one that I would choose to watch the most out of all of them. You know, some people have asked, would I do a retrospective video on the VHS series? And like, the reason I never really thought about it is because it's not really a franchise like that. Like, it's not a connective story film to film, right? So again, that's why this one is cheating a little bit. But VHS 2 has a couple of sequences that I love. It has the whole cult sequence with like the mass like suicide thing, which is crazy. And it has that alien sequence towards the end, the one that's all a POV where you're inside the dude's eye. It has, I think, overall, yeah, there might be some segments in other VHS films that are better than the ones of VHS 2, but if you're going for full consistency, start to finish, I think VHS 2 is the best in the series. All right, now we'll get into ones that are a little bit more legitimate. Okay, so my number 8 pick is going to be 28 Weeks Later. And this might be a little controversial because a lot of people would say that 28 Days Later is like not only the best film out of the two, but one of the best zombie movies ever made. And you're not really wrong. I don't know if 28 Days Later kind of invented the whole infected human fast-running zombie thing, but it definitely was, I would say, the pioneer. You know, it's definitely the one that people look to as the example, and it's a great film. But 28 Weeks Later, to me, I've just always enjoyed more. And I think it might be a combination of a couple of the set pieces, like obviously the opening scene that everyone remembers where the main character is running in the field and all of the infected people are chasing him with that score. It's just, bro, it's peak cinema. But I also really like the main character. I like that, you know, he made this horrible mistake in the beginning of the movie out of fear, and then he keeps trying to, you know, hide that fact, you know, hide his shame, hide his guilt, and then he's forced to deal with it. I think a lot of the supporting characters are really great in it, like Jeremy Renner. And like I said, it just has some really great sequences in it where the original 28 Days Later, I also think is fantastic. But if you're going from like a visual spectacle, the set pieces themselves, and just, I guess, just expanding the lore and expanding the mythology of what this world is like with like the quarantined area and everything. And then just that falling into disaster and just the inevitability of falling into disaster because of humanity, you know, I think that 28 Weeks Later just hits that specific chord with me that just makes me like it more than the original. My number 7 pick is going to be The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring now has this massive kind of shared universe with like the Annabelle films and The Nun and everything. And the original Conjuring, I remember when it came out and I enjoyed it. I'm not really like a huge fan of ghost and paranormal movies to begin with, but the thing that really draws me to the Conjuring movies is the relationship between its two main characters and how they're a couple and how they kind of do this thing together and they both rely on each other and support each other. I just really love the dynamic between the two main characters so much. And I think that in The Conjuring 2, you get that expanded upon very, very well. But at the same time, you get the introduction to so many like specific creepy things that would become staples in the Conjuring universe, like the Nun and the Crooked Man and all of these things that I think far exceed the original, because the original is, I guess, kind of I don't want to say simplistic in like a bad way. I'm not saying that, like, I like the original. But it's pretty much like a standard paranormal, haunted, possession kind of vibe. Whereas The Conjuring 2, I think, expands its lore and expands its universe while also doubling down on how great the relationship is between the two main characters, and to me, becomes an all-around better movie. Conjuring 3, yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment, but I hope they bring it back. I heard they're making a fourth one, so let's end on a high note. My number 6 pick is going to be as basic as you can get. Sorry, but it's the truth, so it has to be included. It is The Bride of Frankenstein. So we're going all the way back. We're talking the Universal monster movies, and I think the Frankenstein series is incredible. And one day, I am definitely going to do a retrospective on the Frankenstein series. I don't know how many people will watch it, because I don't know how many people still watch these old movies, but the Frankenstein series from the classic Universal monster series is the best of the best. None of the other monsters really ever got up to the level that the Frankenstein movies did. As far as a series, like the original film, you can argue Dracula or whatever, but as a franchise, as a series, Frankenstein did it the best. And you could even argue the third one is the best. But Bride of Frankenstein, again, I think it expands on everything that the original introduced. And I think having more confliction with Dr. Frankenstein and introducing a secondary antagonist with Dr. Pretorius, who is like one of the coolest mad scientists in all of mad scientist history. Like, I always think about Dr. Pretorius and how confident he is and how cocky he is. And it also has all of the emotional weight of the Frankenstein character that you don't get in the original film. And if you're saying that it's based on the novel, it expands, it goes further, into ideas that were present in the novel, but also makes Frankenstein way more sympathetic than the first one does. And the first one does a good job of it, but this one has the entire sequence where he's being chased and tortured by the townspeople, and then when he finally finds the blind character and makes a friend, and then all of that is torn away from him, leading to him just wanting somebody to care about him, just wanting a friend, wanting a companion, wanting the Bride of Frankenstein to be made so that he has someone, and then when she finally does, she fucking hates him. It's like this poor creature that didn't even ask to be born, that's just a product of humanity's hubris. I don't know what to say, but Bride of Frankenstein has more emotional weight. It does better things with its characters. It's just overall better. My number 5 is going to be a very recent pick, but I think that it's just a fact, is that Terrifier 2 was better than the original Terrifier. Terrifier as a franchise, as it stands right now, is still kind of in rocky territory, because you have a bunch of people that love it for its absurdity and its gore and its kill scenes and just Art the Clown, kind of representing one of the only slashers in modern day, It's like, how long has it been since there's been a Friday the 13th movie or Nightmare on Elm Street? It's like Art the Clown is kind of all we got right now. And he's a great, funny, entertaining character who's also like horrific. And the things that he does to people are completely absurd and over the top, and perhaps does take it too far. But at the same time, you just can't help but love him. The original Terrifier has some standout horrific sequences, and it is definitely a series that goes for shock value, and that won't work for everybody. But Terrifier 2 attempted to, I guess, turn this into, I think in my review I said, it's attempting to be the Terminator 2 of slasher series. And what do I mean by that? Where the original Terrifier is only an hour and a half. It's pretty basic slasher setup. It's got a couple shocking kill scenes, but it's I don't know if it would have stood out as much if there was never any continuation about it. You know, like it's a good movie. But Terrifier 2 attempted to do something where they made a 2.5 hour long epic slasher movie. They added in all these themes and ideas of Sienna as the main character, kind of, you know, becoming this mythological figure to face Art the Clown. They expanded all the kill scenes. They made them longer, more drawn out, more horrific. They did so much more with it, and I appreciate that attempt. Like, I know the Terrifier movies don't work for everybody, and I'm not saying that it's like my favorite franchise or anything like that, but I appreciate the attempt of taking this general idea that they had in the original and just saying, let's try to make this as big, as grandiose, as epic, as disturbing, as horrific as we can. And for the most part, I think it worked out. My number 4 pick is going to be Final Destination 2. And I think this one is, again, probably a more common pick, I would say, because it has the opening kill scene that we all remember the best. I guarantee, everyone that's around my age, like the millennial generation, I guess, we all collectively remember how terrifying that scene on the highway was, where the log drops off and crashes through the cop car. And so everybody that I know that's around my age that saw the movie around the same, you know, we were young, probably like 13, 14 when that movie came out. I don't quite remember, somewhere around there. But we all get out of the way if there's a truck carrying logs in front of us. Everyone has PTSD from that scene. It is more iconic than the plane sequence in the original for that reason, because it literally, like, the first one didn't scare an entire generation to not get on a plane. All right, but the second one scared an entire generation to not drive behind a truck carrying logs, for sure. I also think the second one does have better kill scenes. I think it has more unexpected kill scenes. The only thing that takes away from the second one is not having Devon Sawa in the cast anymore, because they did confirm that he died, which I think was a missed opportunity. I think that was a mistake. You know, they did bring Ali Larder back, which was cool. But I think they should have kept him. But other than that, I think the second one exceeds everywhere that the first... It does everything the first one does, just a bit better. My number 3 pick is going to be Friday the 13th, Part 2. I think this was obvious to be on the list, although the original Friday the 13th is still a fun movie, and I do enjoy the mystery aspect of not knowing who the killer is, and it has some good kills. It doesn't hold a candle to Friday the 13th Part 2. Part 2 is the introduction to Jason. It has the best final girl in the Friday the 13th series with Ginny. It expands on the lore. It has the house that Jason kind of built in the middle of the woods with the severed head of his mom that is iconic. The only thing the second one might not have for a Friday the 13th movie is Jason in the hockey mask. But other than not having the hockey mask, I think Friday the 13th Part 2 gives you everything that you want in a Friday the 13th movie. It's got the kills, it's got the gore, it's got Jason, it's got the nudity, it's got everything that you want. It's got a guy in a wheelchair getting a machete in the face. I'm not saying... Wait, we don't want that in movies, but it happens. It shows that Jason kills everyone. He doesn't play favorites. Yeah, I don't know. I think Friday the 13th Part 2 is one of the best in the franchise. There's only 2, maybe 3... that I would maybe put over it, but it's up there. It's really high up there, and I think that by introducing Jason and giving us perhaps the most famous slasher of all time, definitely deserves a spot on the list just for that. But it's got many, many other things I think are better than the original 2. My number 2 pick is going to be Child's Play 2. And for a long time, I thought that I liked the original Child's Play the best. But after I rewatched all the films for my retrospective video, I realized that Child's Play 2 really is the GOAT of the franchise. And the things that make it better, I think, is that it does expand on Chucky's personality. You get way more screen time with Chucky being Chucky, whereas in the original, he's kind of playing the doll, you know, for a while and whispering things to Andy. So you don't, until the reveal of Chucky towards the middle of the film, you know, he's mostly just being the doll. Whereas in Child's Play 2, right from the get-go, Chucky is given the one-liners and, you know, he's killing people. He's doing all of the things that you want to see Chucky do, but it still kind of holds true to its horror roots. Like, it gets a little bit silly. It's kind of like, I guess, Dream Warriors for Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's that middle ground movie where it's starting to become, you know, a little bit dark comedy, a little bit sillier, but still pretty horrific in its own right. And what I also love about Child's Play 2 is that Andy now knows what's going on. It's a little bit better than in the original where he's like, Chucky's my friend, yada yada. This one, I think it makes it scarier that the kid knows that Chucky is trying to kill him, but it's the adults that don't believe him, as opposed to like the adult trying to figure it out and, you know, the kid believing Chucky's his friend. This one, you know, Andy is like, get this doll away from me. He's trying to fucking kill me. Kyle's a great character. And of course, the ending sequence in the toy factory, probably the most memorable sequence in any of the Child's Play movies. So yeah, part 2 is the essential Child's Play. And my number 1 pick is also going to be one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and that is The Devil's Rejects, which is a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, I know that Rob Zombie is a controversial figure as a director, and there's a bunch of his movies that I don't like or just can't stand, okay? But when it comes to his own franchise of House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, I like both of those films, but Devil's Rejects, to me, again, maybe I just saw it at the perfect time in my life, but I think that is a masterpiece of a horror film. I love putting the killers in the protagonist role. I think that Bill Moseley as Otis does an incredible acting performance, better than any other movie he's been in, including, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Him as Otis in that film, I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work. Fucking chills every time I see that scene. That scene is terrifying, and it's so bleak because like these characters have a moment of opportunity to save themselves and they fuck it up, and Otis just beats the shit out of it. It's just terrifying. Sid Haig is fantastic in the movie. I love the gritty kind of realism to it. You know, Rob Zombie is obviously very obsessed with movies that take place in the 70s, so this movie takes place in the 70s. But whereas House of a Thousand Corpses is a little bit sillier, you know, and I like that movie too, but it's very much like, you know, an in-your-face kind of music video, flashy colors, Dr. Satan, all that kind of stuff. Devil's Rejects really peels it back, and it's just about 3 characters that are completely out of their fucking mind trying to evade the law. And I love the switch of the 2 characters where... or of the 2 factions, where you have the police officer character who is going more and more insane and willing to do like horrific things himself to get back at these characters. You know, whether he's justified or not, that's up to the audience. And that's what I really like about it, is that it doesn't tell you how to feel. You know, it leaves it up to the audience to decide. You know, you can root for the killer. I mean, it's all fiction, right? So you can root for the killers if you want to, or you can root for the police officer. But then when the officer starts doing these horrible things, you kind of realize every character in this movie is morally gray and you know, going into the darkest aspects of themselves. And then the final sequence, the best use of Freebird ever in a movie, and really would have been the perfect ending. But then he made 3 from Hell and fucked it up. God damn it, Rob Zombie. Anyways, guys, that is my list of my top 10 part 2s that I think are better than the original. So let me know what you think of my list down below. Again, it's all subjective. It's just my personal list. It's not saying that these are the best part 2s of all time, you know, and it's not possible to have a different opinion. Not what I'm saying. So put your favorite part 2s down below, or your part 2s that you think are better than the original in the realm of horror. Thanks for watching, guys. Do appreciate it. And like I said, thanks for the views on my last video as well. It is really, really helpful while I'm working on these longer, bigger projects. You know, the long, you know, multiple hour long content, giant videos that I make. They take a really, really long time to make. And in the meantime, it's you know, YouTube views just kind of go down and down. So these videos kind of help me stay afloat, you know, while I'm making the longer form content. So all views and all interaction on these videos really, really do help me, and they allow me the time to work on the bigger videos. So thank you guys for that. There's also the Patreon channel memberships if you want to support. If not, that's okay too. I appreciate you guys watching. So thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.